Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews Podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Patrick Belin.
Hello, I am here.
He
Even though
is.
You can't see me.
Yeah. You'll never see us. Well, unless we do videos again like we used to. But you'll always hear us talking about movies and raging against the Hollywood machine. So we are here today to talk about the Star Trek franchise in honor of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, but also in honor of the release of Star Trek Beyond. And what we decided is all of us on our team, we decided we would pick some Star Trek movies that each of us would talk about. We're not necessarily talking about our favorites. We're trying to cover the franchise. We've each picked a couple movies that we're going to go in depth on and explore why they're intriguing as movies and why they're intriguing as Star Trek movies. So, Patrick, if you want to start us off, I know you're going to talk about Star Trek Generations, which was the one that combined the original cast and the Next Generation cast. Just off to get started, is there anything that made this movie significant in the context of the Star Trek movies that makes it stand out to you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's got a a very strong shtick here, right? It's supposed to be sort of passing on the torch from the old cast to the Generations cast.
Right.
So I saw the trailers all over again, and that seemed to be one of the main marketing points for this, and I imagine that's why a lot of people saw it. I did see it a long time ago, of course, and that aspect was interesting. But it was, of course, the shtick died pretty quickly, and the plot itself, I wasn't that interested, even though they had one of the most famous conflicted characters of all time from The Clockwork Orange and Malcolm McDowell.
Right.
So that was an interesting casting choice. It's just too bad they didn't do anything interesting with him.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't know that it's the most iconic film of all the Star Trek films, but for that reason, that's why it stands out. And then the following film, First Contact, which was more interesting, I think, as a movie.
I absolutely agree.
I enjoyed that one, actually.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah, I only saw Generations once, and for me, once was enough.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's it's honestly, I kind of think it's like the second worst of the Star Trek movies. If the motion picture is the worst, I mean, there were.
Are we talking about Generations or First Contact?
Generations. First Contact, I love.
Yeah.
But Generations, I mean, it just was not a very meaningful story, and the combination of the Shatner-led cast and the Patrick Stewart-led cast, like, it came off as feeling more of a gimmick than a chance to do something emotionally meaningful.
Exactly.
It's like, let's just mash them up.
Yeah.
And then you get a spoiler alert, the big scene where Kirk and Picard fight Malcolm McDowell at the end, and a funny story about that scene. Originally, Malcolm McDowell shot William Shatner in the back, and that was how he killed him. And the test audience didn't like that, so they spent millions of dollars to reshoot the scene. And the result is, as you see, he dies by getting heroically crushed by debris. So it's like it's the death of this really iconic pop culture figure, and the whole fight just came off as totally ridiculous. The reshoots really did not help that one.
Yeah, I watched some of that on YouTube again. I think yesterday, and yeah, it looked pretty corny.
Oh, so corny, yeah. That's all I got on Generations. Unless there's anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
With Generations? No, it's actually kind of a forgettable movie.
Oh, I agree completely. Well, the next Star Trek movie that I'm going to talk about is as I would say, more memorable than Generations, and it's The Voyage Home, which of course came out in '96. It's the one
86.
86. I'm sorry.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
long time ago.
yeah. I know, it's crazy. Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's with the original cast: William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, etc. And as you probably remember, they have to go back in time to the 1980s to save humpback whales from extinction, to save the world. And what I love about this Star Trek movie is that it's really stupid in a good way. And the brilliant thing about it is, I mean, I'm a pretty big Trekkie. I really like the shows. I really like the movies. But I mean, Star Trek is in a lot of ways, kind of ridiculous. And the great thing about The Voyage Home was, you're seeing these characters from the future in the 1980s. So I mean, that's even more ridiculous. The movie embraced the ridiculousness, and therefore it's kind of, a spoof of Star Trek itself when you see Kirk and Spock trying to ride the bus across the bridge, It's so great. And then
It was really cheesy.
It was cheesy, yeah. And yet at the same time, like on the flip side, it's kind of a clever critique of the 1980s and modern life in general, because there's a lot of, great satirical moments, like where Spock asks Kirk why he keeps cussing, and Kirk said, "Oh, it's the only way to make draw attention to yourself in this era." And I thought, it's like, yeah, that's not a bad insight, on America. But I'm a fan of it. Yeah.
That's another movie I haven't seen in ages. I think I saw it when I was a kid, actually.
Oh yeah,
but I
nice.
still remember
Nice.
I do recall the cheesiness of it.
Oh, so
For
cheesy,
sure.
yeah. Well, Leonard Nimoy spends the whole movie walking around in a white bathrobe. So,
Right,
I mean,
exactly. So that was interesting.
yeah. I mean, Star Trek is always, always has a comedic element, and this is that on steroids, I mean? And Leonard Nimoy directed it and did a really good job for someone who, really, did not have much training, I thought. I mean, visually, it's pretty striking.
I want to get into something, but I don't know. Maybe we should finish talking about these movies, right? That we selected.
Sure. Yeah. Let's. Should we do it at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got one more thing coming at the end, everybody out there. So you wanted to talk about. You wanted to talk about First Contact.
Oh, First Contact. Yeah, that was pretty enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
Well, personally, I like the Next Generation cast. Picard is my favorite character.
Me too.
So
yeah.
I follow the Generations more than the original cast. And this was a movie that pretty much brought in their worst enemies.
Yes.
For the Generation cast. I mean, of course, the Klingons was for the first cast.
Right.
And they still exist, of course, in this Next Generation, but this was basically Picard and the Borg.
Yeah.
That to me, that's just interesting. It's kind of like Batman versus Joker,
Yeah, it is.
And I thought it made for a really, really fun movie. I enjoyed it.
I'm with you there. I mean, this. Whenever I go and try and rank the movies, I'm always really indecisive, but this one's always near the top for me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's another time travel story, of course, and of course it revolves around the Next Generation cast going back in time to the moment when humans make first contact with alien life, and how the movie explores the idea of how that moment was a turning point for Earth. It was the moment when humanity realizes they're not alone,
Right.
and therefore they emerge into this utopian world we know from the original series.
Right.
And for me, going back to that moment was a great way to get to the core of what Star Trek is about, which is about this hopeful vision of how things can be. And I love there's a great moment towards the end of the movie where they're out in space, and James Cromwell's character sees Earth, and he's like, "Oh wow!" And LeVar Burton says, "You haven't seen anything yet," and it's the beginning of this beautiful era, which is, of course, why the Borg are such a terrifying threat because they're trying to prevent the birth of this utopia. And that's why that's, as you pointed out, why that's the Batman Joker type conflict of this world, because it's a profound thing, and it's a war between two different philosophies, I think.
Sure. But I was just noticing how First Contact came out in '96.
Yes.
So I think, if I recall, at the time there's a little bit of a trope trend of making contact with aliens. The Jodie Foster movie.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
The original ID4.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. There's this how humans would react to alien life.
Yes.
Or something. So I guess I mean, even the name First Contact, it kind of tries to cash in on that trend a little bit.
That's true. Yeah.
So I guess there's a little bit of that, but that doesn't take away from the way the film played out. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Well, also the Borg is it's not a new thing.
No.
It was in the TV shows already.
Yeah, probably the most popular episodes of the TV show, I'd say. I mean,
yeah, probably. So it'd be interesting if they were to reboot that, actually.
Do like a reboot with new actors as the next generation characters.
Right. Well, I was thinking in terms of this current reboot, which what I wanted to get into later.
Oh, sure.
But no, anyways, we won't go there yet.
Yeah, we'll get there though. Yeah, it's going off of the Borg. Another thing I think is really cool about this one is about First Contact, is the scenes between the Borg Queen and Data, and just long scenes of him tied up, and the two of them just talking in this psychological battle, and that's a rare thing for any movie, let alone a Star Trek movie. I mean, you look at you look at one of the weaker Next Generation movies, Star Trek Nemesis, where that movie ends with just a big space battle where the Enterprise gets all smashed up, and then First Contact, it doesn't have a huge battle at the climax, but the emotion is running so high with the psychological battle between Data and the Borg Queen, and with Picard facing his fears and also like letting go with his obsession with the Borg. I mean, it was very Star Trekky. It was very popcorny, but it got to some profound stuff, I think.
Yeah, actually, now that we're talking about it, I kind of want to watch it again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Because it's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah. Oh, and I just have to say that's so badass when Worf shoots the deflector dish and says, "Assimilate this." I mean,
yeah.
Oh, so cool. Well, I've got one more Star Trek movie to talk about, and unfortunately, it's not as delightful as First Contact. It's the one that William Shatner directed, The Final Frontier, from '89, aka the Star Trek movie where they search for God. And this really has its moments, but mainly I always saw it as being a so bad it's funny Star Trek movie. I mean, I mean, the whole thing just feels like kind of tacky and kind of sleazy. I mean, there's a scene where a character dances around naked in the desert. There's a really weird alien bar that's like the low rent version of the Mos Eisley Cantina, and it just there's this attempt to explore big ideas about faith, and the characters dealing with the idea of whether or not God exists, and I don't think it stuck the landing. I don't think it had the conviction to go with its big ideas. And I think at the end, when God turns out to be some evil hologram that just blows people up. I mean, what does that even mean?
I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, it's just goofy. Although I will say, there's a bit of genuine wonderment at the end when they land on the quote unquote God planet, it's it's one of the rare times in the movies where they're actually exploring an unknown planet. So there's some thrills there, but mostly I just I'm like laughing at this movie and laughing at the fact that William Shatner directed it and wanted it to be this big, profound sci-fi philosophical opus.
Well, fun fact: William Shatner also co-wrote it.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe he was going through some kind of existential crisis where he was finding God.
Maybe, yeah.
He just wanted to make a movie about it.
All right, so that wraps it up for today. Remember to, if you like this podcast, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews, and to check out all of our latest reviews of new movies at thomoviereviews.wordpress.com. Once again, I'm Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and from me and Patrick here at T.H.O, happy movie watching.
See ya.